Right, I probably need to start this with my usual welcome. So, welcome to the mostly monthly Enterprise Architecture Forum, and you know, stuff that we've been doing since my way back. So here's the standard introduction. So if you have anything to present and you are interested in joining the forum and getting actively involved, I'm looking forward to seeing you on at the sessions. So, Andrew, you're driving the slides. So if you want to move to the next one. So, just as a heads up, the next EA forum is in September, and that's going to be a face-to-face event in Johannesburg, which is presented by Chantal Couture from the University of Stellenbosch. And she's got some alternative ideas around enterprise architecture approaches, etc., specifically within academia. And given the number of members who are very active in the architecture space, but also coming from the universities, I'm sure that'll be a great event. Christopher has volunteered to actually be able to stream that session live as well. So it's going to be the first time that we are linking a physical event to a virtual streaming as well. So the invite will go out into the broader African community. If you want to go through, like I usually do, I kind of give a bit of a headline as to new events and new content that has come out of the open group. So Andrew, if you want to go to the next slide. So recently, as in July, the Open Group has launched a new forum, the Open Group Digital Transformation Forum. The key objectives there is focusing on obviously digital transformation, and it's a very exciting development. And Andrew will comment about any collaboration and how it hangs together, etc. And we can kind of save this for questions as we go. I had an introduction slide, for Andrew, which has been replaced, right, Andrew? So as a very focused introduction, Andrew is somebody who has a real enterprise architecture background that is focused on what enterprise architecture is, the actual application of it, and has got a really great contribution to make to the broader open group itself. So, Andrew, I'm going to hand it over to you now, and thank you.
Thanks very much,
I look forward to your presentation.
Good. So it's great to be here, and I'm really excited actually to be given the opportunity to talk to you all. I was very pleased when Stuart asked me to do a presentation about the Architecture Forum, because it's so easy to get wrapped around the axle of the latest, greatest technology and architecture approaches and standards and all this great stuff. But you can lose sight of some of the fundamentals sometimes. And if you're new to the open group as a member, or perhaps you're not one of the team that was shown the onboarding deck when your company joined, there might be things about the open group and the way we work and the kind of work that we do that you just don't know about. And that's a shame, because if you don't know about it and you don't know to look for it, then that's a lost opportunity potentially for you to get involved in aspects of work that are exciting, cutting edge, and which we're looking at. And also a lost opportunity for us, because we, of course, as the open group, rely upon our members to be the people who roll up their sleeves and actually create the standards that and the content for those standards that we're all about. So in terms of both benefits to yourselves and benefits to the organization as a whole, perhaps taking your eyes off the glitzy, shiny new thing and looking down at our feet from time to time isn't a bad thing to do. So I'm going to run through an overview about what the Architecture Forum is, and the kind of work that we're doing, how it's structured, and so on and so forth. Some of you may know this stuff already. Some of you may not be aware of some of the things I'm going to talk to you about. So here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about the forums within the Open Group. The Architecture Forum is the main focus of this presentation, but the Architecture Forum is one of a number of forums that sit within an ecosystem, if you like, if I can use that word loosely. And it's useful to understand what those other forums are so that you can see where the Architecture Forum sits. We will look at the Architecture Forum structure, the activities and meetings that go on, the forum directors and the role of forum support, some of the tools and resources, and of course questions. So if you have any questions, I believe there's a Q&A panel you can drop your questions into during the presentation, and we'll look at those at the end. So me, well, you can look at the things that I've got there. I'm TOGAF certified version 9, so that goes back a while. It was 2012 when I took that certification. I'm a chartered IT professional with the British Computer Society. I'm also a chartered engineer through the Engineering Council UK. So my background has been very much focused on practical application of technology, architecture, design, and indeed software development, which is where I started. When I left university, I moved into software development with a number of different languages, having done development at university, but rapidly found my home was data. I was working with relational databases a lot, so I became a data architect and a data management specialist fairly early on in my career. That career has spanned a number of different disciplines and business domains, including policing and criminal justice, retail and supply chain software systems, design and development, aerospace and defence and security. And before I joined the Open Group, I was enterprise architect at Dyson, who, of course, you may be familiar with as the manufacturers of things that tend to suck and blow air around a lot and do a few other things besides. But I was there for 5 years. I joined back in October last year as the Architecture Forum Director and Product Manager for the TOGAF Standard. So I wear 2 hats. As a Forum Director, which is what I'm speaking to you as today, my role is very much about making sure the forum runs smoothly, that the working groups that I look after have all of the tools and resources and the wherewithal to be able to do what they need to do. As the product manager for the TOGAF Standard, of course, you may well be familiar with the TOGAF Standard. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, enterprise architecture framework in the world. It continually evolves, and my job as the product manager for that is to ensure that the framework evolves in a sensible, cohesive and robust way, so that we have something which remains relevant and applicable to the architects of tomorrow as much as it is of the architects of today. So in all, I've got something like 30 years experience in IT and software development, data and enterprise architecture. So I come very much from the bottom up approach, if you like, having suffered the pain of writing software and then looking at the dovetailing of how the software works into what the business needs are. And I found that to be the most rewarding and fascinating aspect of the role, which is why architecture really appealed to me. So the forums then, so the forums within the Open Group are where the actual work, if you like, is done. So this is where the standards and best practices are developed. And I'll just run through these briefly, just to give you a context of where the Architecture Forum sits. So any member organisation of the Open Group is entitled to participate in one or more of the forums that we have. And the forums effectively are vendor-neutral environments where members can share their knowledge and resources. You can also collaborate on developing open technology standards, but also the certifications behind them as well. So it's not just about the standards, it's about ensuring that we've got the mechanisms in place to ensure that the standards are being applied correctly and that people who want to get certified as being knowledgeable in those standards or having experience in them can do so. We cover a range of technical, business, legal and regulatory issues, and each forum addresses a specific functional area. They're all fully supported by the open group resources of the forum support teams and so on. So running down the list, we've got ArchiMate. So the ArchiMate Forum, if you're not familiar with ArchiMate, it's a visual modeling notation standard for enterprise architecture modeling that simplifies and helps to clarify and describe complex systems. The Architecture Forum itself is a home of several different standards. TOGAF Standard is the main one that people will be familiar with. We also have Open Agile Architecture, and we also have a Commercial Aviation Reference Architecture Standard, which lives within that forum as well. IT for IT is creating standards for operating models and reference architectures for running the business of IT within an organization. So treating the IT organization within a company or an enterprise just like any other line of business would be. So it has its own reference architectures, its own sets of deliverables and so on. Open digital transformation, Stuart's already mentioned, brand new, hot off the press, paint still wet, focusing on the rigors and the realities of how digital transformation needs to be applied in the modern world. The world of IT and business are both changing at an astonishing rate at the moment. And the Digital Transformation Forum has really got its work cut out in trying to pull together the latest thinking around how businesses need to evolve, given a landscape of technologies and capabilities that is evolving faster than anyone, I think, can keep up with. The Open Digital Transformation Forum has absorbed the Government EA work group. So if any of you are familiar with the Government EA work group and you look for it on the website now, you will find it's actually been absorbed into the Open Digital Transformation Forum, as has also the Digital Portfolio work group, the DPWG. Both the Government EA work group and the Digital Portfolio are now working groups homed within that Open Digital Transformation Forum, the ODXF. Open Footprint, it provides a common model for footprint related data. That covers types of emissions and consumptions such as water, land and energy, and base calculations to normalize and aggregate data. The forum's goal is to develop open, interoperable environmental footprint measurement standards and solutions that benefit all companies and society at large, of course. OPAF, the Open Process Automation Forum, is producing technical standards for distributed control systems. So these are the systems that run things like process control plants that produce everything from gasoline to pharmaceuticals, paper, electricity, chemicals, food, and so on. The forum has many large producers of these products involved as members, as well as major suppliers of DCS systems. The idea for the forum was brought to us some years ago by ExxonMobil. They wanted to see an industry transformational standards effort started for the users of DCS's distributed control systems, that is. The forum's achieving a broad transformation of what was a very proprietary world. As you can imagine, the world of industrial pipelines and process management is very much focused on the physical hardware, and the automation of that hardware was very much geared around physical systems which were, broadly speaking, fairly isolated from each other. So with the advent of OPAF, we have a standard which starts to break down those silos. OSDU is the Open Subsurface Data Universe, which sounds very grand and very exciting. It's data for anything underground, really. And it's focusing on developing an open energy data platform. So if you think of it in terms of data for describing, for example, oil and gas research underground, mineralogy, that kind of thing, then that's where OSDU sits. The Open Trusted Technology Forum, OTTF, that facilitates creating international standards focused on supply chain to establish a unified view of practicing supply chain risk management for information and communication technology products. The Platform Forum standardizes the platform infrastructure on which applications can be built. If you think about Unix, Unix is probably the oldest standard that the Open Group has. Indeed, some people may not even realize that Unix is a standard owned by the Open Group, and it really is our foundational piece. Real-time and embedded systems, this is dependability through assuredness, and their approach for that enables customers and end users that rely on mission and safety critical systems to reduce the risk of malfunctioning systems and security vulnerabilities in their system environments. The Security Forum is currently focused on two areas: zero trust architecture and risk quantification through the use of our open FAIR standard. And if anyone's interested in understanding how to measure risk, how to quantify and qualify risk, then I can recommend looking at the open FAIR standard. It has some very good content around language for describing risk, analysing risk, and coming to a conclusion as to just how risky something actually is. We have, in addition to all of those forums, which are fairly broad in their scope collectively, two industry verticals. So we have a separate exploration, mining, metals and minerals forum that focuses on EA standards and reference models for exploration, mining, metals and minerals industries. And we have a healthcare forum, which looks at architectural issues in the healthcare world. So you can see the architecture forum is relatively broad in as much as it covers enterprise architecture, which can be applied in pretty much all of these different forums themselves. So what is it that makes the architecture forum different? Well, it's a home to enterprise architecture, and whilst architecture is done throughout places like healthcare and government and open digital transformation, the Architecture Forum is the home to where the frameworks and the standards for EA are defined. So if you think of us as the factory for producing those standards, and those standards can then be applied in a standardized way or in reference architecture ways across different verticals and across different areas. So that's the relationship between the Architecture Forum and some of the other forums. And I've already mentioned that we're home to the TOGAF Standard, the Open Agile Architecture, and Commercial Aviation Reference Architecture. There are about 10 active working groups within the forum, within the Architecture Forum. Each of those working groups is looking at specific areas where architecture is being developed, and we'll take a little bit of a look at those in a bit more detail shortly. Key people. We have the Vice President for Architecture, Chris Ford. Chris is the VP for the architecture portfolio, and by that I mean that he looks after both the Architecture Forum and the ArchiMate Forum. So the forum director for ArchiMate, Kelly Cannon, she reports to Chris. I report to Chris, there's me in the middle, and Dan Hutley, the other forum director for the Architecture Forum, also reports to Chris. So Chris is our boss there. Dan and I effectively do the same job, but we have different areas in as much as the working groups that we have within the forum are divvied up between us. I look after about 5 of them, Dan looks after the others, and if any one of us is away, then the other one can step into the breach to help. Dan has been here for about 5 years. As I said at the beginning, I've been here for just under a year now. Peter Ridgway and Ken Street, in the bottom 2 photographs here, are the elected officers of the forum. They are our members who volunteer and are elected by the forum membership into the role. So if you're not aware, the co-chair's role for running and steering the Architecture Forum is a member-led activity. Elections are held every 2 years. They're usually staggered by year so that we get a degree of overlap and continuity between the different members and the chairs. Their role is they are responsible for coordinating the activities of the forums and work groups on behalf of the membership of the body. They're there to enhance the effectiveness of the forum, the working group, by formulating recommendations for approval by members of the body, and they're authorised to take decisions which are subject to subsequent ratification. They ensure the forum activities happen in accordance with the open group principles, that consensus process is adhered to, that they liaise with the chairs of the other forums where necessary, and they report periodically to the governing board and to the executive on the current forum activity. It is a volunteer position, and if anyone's interested in volunteering for these, all of the forums have their own chairs. It's a great role to get involved with if you want to raise your visibility within the organisation and you have a knack for managing organisations and bodies of people such as this. What does it all look like in a big picture then? So what have we got here? There is a grey box in the middle, which is the Architecture Forum. So that is the space that's inhabited by our members, if you like. These working groups here in the middle, I've only got 4 of them drawn. As I said, there are actually 10 of them. You can consider those as projects within the forum. Each has its own participants, and there's usually a working group lead. These working groups are where the activity happens and the work is done that leads to standards development. Any forum member can participate in any working group as they wish. There is no formal enrolment required. You just go to the working groups area in the Plato collaboration tool and subscribe to the calendar to see when the meetings are, and just join the call when the meeting is due, and you'll be very welcome. The forum officers, well, Ken and Peter are our 2 forum officers, so this is the overlap, if you like, from membership and representing the membership to the open group as a body. The forum staff are Dan and myself, and there's also a link to the certification authority. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, certification is a key part of what the open group does, not only from the point of view of assessing people against knowledge and experience to award badges and certifications to demonstrate their competence, but also in tooling. And particularly when it comes to enterprise architecture modeling tools, then those tools can be submitted by the vendors for certification against a set of criteria which determine whether or not that tool does actually do what it needs to do when it comes to producing stuff which is compliant with the TOGAF standard. So it's very important that that communication between what the Architecture Forum is doing and what the certification authority needs from the forum is kept open and managed well. The governing board, we've got members in brackets after that. So the governing board is the area where the member representatives from our platinum members sit. So when you join the open group as a business, and bear in mind you have to be a business to join the open group, we don't have individual memberships. You can join as a business at one of 4 different levels. If you're an academic institute, such as a university or college, then the academic staff can join as an academic member. Within commercial businesses, there are 3 membership levels. Then there's silver membership, which gives you access to 1 forum. If you wish to join the 2nd forum, you can buy a 2nd silver membership. After that, if you want more forums, you have to go to a gold membership, which gives you access to all of the forums within the open group. And then finally, at the top of the tree, there's the platinum level of membership, which gives you all of the above, so you can join all of the forums and working groups, but also gives you a seat on the governing board here. The governing board meets once a quarter, and the meetings include presentations from a selection of the forums. Each forum usually presents to the governing board once a year or thereabouts. We did one to the last governing board meeting, which was about a month ago. At the very top here, we've got the Open Group Executive Management Team. So this consists of our CEO, Steve Nunn, the Chief Financial Officer, CFO, James Scott, our Chief Marketing Officer, Patty Donovan, and the various vice presidents, including Chris Ford. Again, this body meets once a quarter, and each forum usually presents to this board roughly once a year or thereabouts. The presentations to the governing board and the exec are usually done by the forum officers, so that's the likes of Ken and Peter, with the forum directors, myself and Dan, there to support in the wings and in the background. On the right-hand side of the picture here, we've got a SOA work group. So anyone who joins the open group is entitled to participate in the SOA work group. It's an open activity. So if you go into the Plato collaboration tool, you will have an ability to subscribe to the calendar for the SOA workgroup activities, and the Architecture Forum and all of the other forums have that ability. So regardless of which forum you're a member of, you can take part in that. So what are the working groups we have and what are they doing? Well, let's run through these a little bit. We've got application architecture. There are a number of publications have come out from the application architecture in recent months and years, including a white paper on value streams and a white paper on application architecture for value streams. The application guide, which is currently in development, is due for publication a bit later on this year, and I'll show you a bit later a timeline of some of where the key publications are coming out. We have a working group on artificial intelligence. That was set up to cover AI in the enterprise and was started off by some seed material from Accenture. They're working currently on a paper regarding AI critical capabilities. There are lots of questions around AI in the industry at the moment, not least of which are around security and ethics and so on and so forth, and all of these areas need to be addressed. The business architecture working group is one of mine. They're working currently on updating a couple of the existing TOGAF series guides, those on information mapping and organization mapping. We have a working group on data integration architecture. That's had a white paper published, and there's a survey and a webinar that's been done, and the next set of deliverables is currently being defined by that. They're also looking at some machine and natural language processing tools. A new guide was published just a matter of a month or so ago, which is to do with open interoperability and the description of open interoperability using a cube of various different dimensions, which helps to visualize the different aspects of interoperability. Ecosystems architecture. Ecosystems is kind of an extension of the enterprise, in as much as it's a bit difficult to draw a hard and fast boundary around enterprises these days. The tendrils of the commercial ecosystems go far and deep, and there is rarely a hard and fast boundary that can be readily drawn between an organization and its suppliers and its customers and the other various dependencies that exist between those things. And that is what we mean when we talk about the ecosystem. If one of your suppliers or one of your customers has a significant problem, then it can have a detrimental effect upon yourself or yourselves as an organization. So those dependencies across the different parties within the ecosystem need to be understood, and the dynamics between those parties have to be understood as well. A book was published in 2023 around the basics of what ecosystems actually is, and that's available for download from the Open Group Library, G23B, if you're interested in looking at that one. If you go into the Open Group Library at pubs.opengroup.org and search for G23B, you can find that book. There is a follow-up book which is currently being written called Ecosystems Architecture in Practice. So that builds upon the basis for what ecosystems is, and asks or answers the question, okay, so what? I'm the CEO of an organization. What do I need to do in order to get a sensible strategy for the evolving world of ecosystems? And that ecosystems world heavily relies upon artificial intelligence, particularly below the waterline, if I can describe it that way, where the automation of processes from what used to be robotic process automation is perhaps becoming even more autonomous, with AIs communicating and establishing communications protocols between each other in order to achieve something. There is a target for reviewing this new book by the end of Q3 2025, with a view to it getting published either just before or just after Christmas. Other working groups, we have Information Architecture, which has published a guide for BI and analytics and for metadata. More recently, the Environmental Sustainability Information TOGAF guide has been published. And if anybody was present at the event in Amsterdam back in back in May, beg your pardon, back in May, then you will have seen some presentations. You may have seen some presentations around that particular area by Celine Lescott. There is another information architecture guide under development, which is all about an introduction to information architecture, with a view to that pulling together the basic entry point for all of information management. Open Agile Architecture. So this is a working group which focuses on the OAA standard. It's working on a maturity model, and there is also a new version of the Agile architecture which is just gone through a company review and is going through comments resolution, or will be going through comment resolution shortly. So we'll talk a little bit about the process for managing standards and the company review process in a little while. If you're not familiar with that. TOGAF and Agile, there's a piece of work in progress aimed at providing a single high-level graphical representation of the TOGAF standard. So if you like, TOGAF on a page. And the Agile Architects Playbook, which was published a couple of years ago, is also now being scrutinized as advances and changes in practices suggest that might be worth bringing up to date. TOGAF and Innovation. The team here are working on creating an open group guide for innovation that maps to the TOGAF ADM, the architecture development method. So if you're familiar with the ADM, it provides a tried and trusted, repeatable way of developing an enterprise architecture. And the innovation lifecycle, which is all about product management and product evolution, it may be well reliant upon the evolution of the architecture of the organization in the same way. So this guide is very much about aligning and marrying those two things together, so that as you are doing innovation, you can apply the ADM to help support a repeatable and robust innovation pipeline. That's just gone through an informal forum review, and there are some updates being applied to that. The Product Advisory Group is a collaborative activity, so there are a number of people that participate in that. Stuart McGregor on this call is one of those people. We meet every couple of weeks, and the aim of that group is to provide collaborative thinking and guidance on the future of the TOGAF standard, and also whether that be a long-term strategic view of big next versions, or whether it be an incremental view of what does the next minor update to the standard look like. All of those questions have to be answered. There are a number of guardrails that we're putting together in terms of principles for managing the TOGAF content, and hopefully once those things have gone through and have been approved and are being enacted, that will help to drive improved cohesion across various parts of the standard. Everything that goes through that product advisory group has to go through the normal forum approvals process. There's nothing special about that. So are microservices and zero trust principles. So both cross collaboration working groups. What does that mean? Basically, it means that they are cross collaborations between the architecture forum and another forum. So zero trust principles is a collaboration with the security forum, and the SOA microservices group, working group, is a collaboration with the SOA work group. There are, in addition, 3 working groups that are inactive, dormant, if you like. Commercial aviation is one of those. Intellectual capital working group, which is all about understanding what we actually have within the TOGAF standard, and TOGAF with digital, which was a collaboration with the digital portfolio work group. That possibly won't come back to life in its same form because the DPWG has, as I've said before, been folded into the Open Digital Transformation Forum. Meetings. So we're all about getting stuff done by the members. So to do that, we need to get together. There are a number of different sorts of meetings that we have within the forum. First of all, we have quarterly meetings of the forum members. These are usually scheduled around the time of the quarterly events. Don't necessarily coincide exactly, and that could be a bit awkward, but we try to sort of get them within a reasonable distance of each other. They usually involve a forum governance session. We do updates on certifications, such as the certification numbers, how many people have been certified in the different qualifications we have. Updates on the product management and open discussions on various selected topics. And the working group leads for the different areas within the forum are also invited to give a brief update and summary of what's going on in their world. The working groups themselves usually meet every week or 2 weeks. You can check the Plato calendar. If you log into Plato, then this is the overall calendar that you will see. These are all of the running events for all of the working groups currently. If you go in, you don't want to subscribe to this. You go into each of the individual working group calendars, which are accessible from the Plato menu on the left-hand side of the Plato screen. And then when you're in that particular working group, you'll be able to subscribe to just that working group's calendar and see the events just for it. And the Architecture Forum officers, so Ken and Peter, Dan and myself and Chris Ford meet with them every couple of weeks, elected officers and forum staff, and that's all about making sure that we are dealing with the steering and advancement of the Architecture Forum in line with the open group strategy and in line with the members' needs. We're addressing those. Pipeline, I alluded to this a little bit earlier on. This is just a quick visual overview of what's coming up to be published at a quarterly level. Microservices data guide was published and is going to be going through further development phases as it continually evolves. For this quarter, we've got the Open Agile Architecture Standard under update. We've got the Information Architecture Data Modeling Guide, sorry, the Application Architecture Modeling Guide being published this quarter. Open Interoperability Framework, I think that's actually been done. That was the cube that I mentioned. And the Guide to Architecture Compliance Review Checklists, which is going through its final company review prior to being published. We have in the fourth quarter a number of other things coming up, including the Innovation Guide, the TOGAF on a page pictures, if you like, which is coming out in the form of a white paper to solicit feedback, really, more than anything else. It's not going to be a fait accompli. It's a, here you go, we've had these ideas, what do you think, kind of white paper. A practitioner's guide to ecosystems will be early next year, potentially. There's a glossary translation into Arabic that's taking place. That's due for publication in the last quarter. And a few other guides. You get the idea. We tend to keep a high level tab on these and make sure that this is kept up to date. This picture gets shared with the exec and with the governing board whenever they ask, and also for the quarterly governing board reports. This always gets shared as well. So forum directors, we've talked about Dan and myself a little bit earlier on. So we are the primary point of contact for members within the organisation, within the Architecture Forum. We organise and moderate the working groups, and we are responsible for the delivery and the quality of what is delivered within our various product ranges. So I'm responsible for the TOGAF Standard. Dan is responsible for the Open Agile architecture, for example. We have a team behind us of forum support people, but they will also respond to direct requests for help from the likes of yourselves, from members. If you're having problem with access to tooling, or you've got general inquiries and you go through the website query mechanisms, then you will get in touch with the people who operate in this team. They help us out a bit with reviews and ballot administration and the establishing and tearing down of new and old working groups as things progress. So, as a member or as an employee of a member organisation, you're allowed to participate with any of the activities within the forums that you have entitlements to. If you haven't already and you don't have a registration, then you can click on the self-registration link. So that takes you to a page on the Open Group's website, which allows you to create your account with the Open Group. You will then get an email which contains a verification link. Once your email has been verified, you'll be able to then log into the collaboration site and view the different work groups and forums that you have entitlements to participate in. So that's what we call Plato. And then from there, you are able to self-subscribe to mail lists. So those mailing lists are what controls your access and communications with the individual working groups that live within the Architecture Forum. We have a members-only GitLab area. So the GitLab area is being used for standards as code. So the TOGAF content has been migrated out of Word documents, for example, into ASCII doc files within GitLab. And the benefit of that is that we can generate from the same source outputs in PDF, HTML, Antora, EPUBs, whatever format is needed. So it's a single source of formatting through the relevant delivery pipeline. That makes life much easier when it comes to dealing with things like the different ways in which publications need to have references and diagrams indicated within the publication, because they're not all the same. You can subscribe to the events within a particular forum and particular working group. You can say hello on Slack. Most of the working groups have Slack channels, and you can participate through any of these mechanisms. So the email group for that particular working group through Slack, WebEx, and GitLab. Not everybody uses GitLab, so some of the working groups and some of the forums are still migrating across to it. Some people still prefer to use Word documents for managing their source, and that's fine. But in time, the general drift will be towards getting GitLab as being the main tool for editing. And it just means that you're only dealing with content. The formatting and editing of the way the content is displayed is standardized through the markup or the markdown language that ASCII doc employs. Tools and resources. So I mentioned earlier on the standards process. This is the main engine of the Open Group, if you like. Everything that is produced as a standard must follow this standards process, regardless of whether it's through the Architecture Forum, the ArchiMate Forum, Open Digital Transformation, whatever, it doesn't matter. This standards process is crucial, and everything that we publish goes through a standardized mechanism. For standards, it's this. For white papers, there is a variation on this. And for guides, again, there is a variation. But for all standards, this process is followed. And you can view this yourself. If you go to the Open Group's website, opengroup.org, and scroll to the very bottom of any page, then in the page footer, there is a link to the standards process. And this is just a very, very high overview of the core processes within that main standards process. Somebody has an idea for a standard, there is a draft development process, it then goes through a company review, which essentially means that anybody within the open group membership is entitled to pass comment. Once the comments have been resolved through a consensus mechanism and comment resolution mechanism, then there is an approvals process, and then it goes through into publication. This process is important for a number of reasons. First of all, it ensures that we are following a rigorously governed mechanism that gives us credibility within the market, but also because we are a feeder organisation into ISO, the International Standards Organisation. And that means that we have to have things done in a way that they can consume. So this ensures that that is the case. Various tools that we have within the forum. Plato, I've already mentioned. It's the collaboration tool that was written by the open groups a while ago. It provides a single central place for managing and collaborating with document. It's primarily a configuration management store, I would say, rather than an interactive document management system. If you're working collaboratively with people on a document, then something like Box might be a better place. Plato doesn't support multiple people working on the same document at the same time, for example. But it is a place where reviews are centered. So a configured version of a document has to be stored in there for a review to be able to take place. WebEx is the primary communication mechanism that is used for the working groups, and that integrates with Plato. As I said, we have Slack, and many of the working groups across the forums use Slack as a lightweight way of communicating, save sending emails everywhere. We have the members GitLab area, which is the collaboration site for documents as code. We have a community GitLab, which is open to members and non-members, and that's all about the collaboration.
When we agree.
Hello? Okay, so Miro we use on and off for ideas and collaboration. We have Trello, and that's used to organize activities internally within the open groups teams. And we have, as I say, Box, which is for dynamic collaboration on product evolution. Then that's probably the place to be. But once something is settled, then it needs to go into Plato, because that holds the master copies. There are a number of publications that are available. The consensus decision-making process guide is available, and all of these are available from the publications. So either publications.opengroup.org or pubs.opengroup.org will take you there as well. And if you search for any of these terms, you will find these guides. There's a guide for elected officers. So that's our co-chairs, what you need to do as a co-chair, what the expectations and what the role involves. Individuals acting as the open group liaison to another organization. We have a number of different kinds of ways of working, if you like, within the open group. Forums is one, work groups are another, and consortia are another. So where we have somebody that's embedded in another organization, then this guide helps elucidate what's required of that individual, and guides on publication development. These are really useful if you're writing anything for the open group, because it gives you an overview of the house style, what kinds of things to avoid and what to do as well. Very much as much a focus on the structure of guides, on the language to be used, and do's and don'ts for authoring content. There is an architect's toolkit. You can find this by going to the TOGAF pages and the architecture forum pages on the Open Groups website. It's a collection of different digital standards tools that might help you as in an architect's world. And YouTube, there are a number of sessions which are hosted on YouTube. Trademarks, this is something which it's the use of trademarks is widely misunderstood, I think, across a lot of the industry, because most people don't need to know or think they don't need to know. Intellectual property is governed by trademark protection and things like copyright. And it's very easy to lose control over your intellectual property if trademarks are abused. Within the Open Group, we're very, very keen that people understand the importance of using trademarks correctly. And there is actually some training on trademarks and trademark usage you can take if you wish. And there is a page about it within the Open Group's website at trademarks, and you can find that. Again, if you get down to the bottom of any of the pages, you'll see a link to legal, and under legal, you'll find a link to the trademarks area. Most misuses of trademarks are accidental and just done from either lack of knowledge or by just typos, misappropriations. But once fixed, they're usually easy. And certification development. So talked a lot about certification, people and tools. People from a knowledge-based or an experience-based approach. So you will find a number of different certification learning paths for the TOGAF standard, for instance. And there is also an open certified architect for an experiential based architecture career, where you may not have used TOGAF per se, but nevertheless you have still done lots of architecture work, and you can be certified as an open CA certified architect without necessarily having to be certified in TOGAF. And that's that. I think we got time for questions. You're on mute, Stuart.
Are there any questions coming through? If you want to pop them into the chat. I saw one question about the presentation being posted after the event, which Carla responded to. It'll be available on the opengroup.co's site under EA Forum presentations.
Yeah, and it's just worth pointing out as well that the hyperlinks in the presentation are live in the PDF that you'll get. So if you weren't able to capture any of those links down, it's not easy to do, then by going through the guide, going through the slides, you can click on them directly to get to, for example, Plato or the other things.
Warren, I see a hand raised there with a question. You want to go ahead?
Thanks, Stuart. It's actually been a couple of years that I've seen your face. So it's good to be reconnecting. I think just one question from my side. I've gone through the whole presentation with yourself, Andrew, and I wanted to just validate or understand in everything that you've been discussing and just showcasing now, where does Zachman fit into this? And how do you address that as part of the architecture as a discipline?
Andrew, would you like me to answer, or are you going to go for it?
I'm quite happy to take that. So John Zachman's framework is another architecture framework, if you like. So TOGAF Standard is the architecture framework that's owned by the Open Group. The TOGAF Standard is different in shape and form to the Zachman framework. Zachman is more of a taxonomy, a categorization mechanism, what I call a chocolate box kind of thing. So you can pop things into different sections to label them as different kinds of things, and the different levels and the different verticals within that framework gives you a rich taxonomy. Zachman fits and works with the TOGAF standard because the TOGAF standard is intended to be tailored for use in any given architecture organization or any given organization doing architecture. The whole ethos behind the TOGAF standard is that it can be plugged into other frameworks, whether they be industry-specific frameworks, such as defense frameworks, the Ministry of Defense Architecture Framework, MODAF, US Department of Defense Architecture Framework, DODAF, minerals, oils, mining frameworks from anywhere. And yeah, all of these different kinds of frameworks can all be linked together with the TOGAF standard. So in that respect, John Zachman's framework is no different to any other framework. If you know that framework and you know TOGAF as a standard, you can link those things together and get the benefit from both, provided you understand what those benefits are going to be. You don't want to splice things together for the sake of it. You have to know that there is going to be benefit there. But Zachman's framework is owned by him. The TOGAF standard is owned by us. Hopefully that clarifies things for you.
I just as a concluding comment, they're certainly supportive. It's more of a question of, it's not an or statement, it can be an and statement, because in TOGAF version 8, it was primarily based on the Zachman framework. 9 had disappeared. 10, I see it's coming back as something that can work with the TOGAF 10th edition. So I kind of think of the Zachman framework as the superset, and from that, given the Zachman framework rules and the differing understanding between composites and primitives, which I think is a concept which has resulted in a lot of organizations confusing architecture and design, where they get lost in the content, versus doing true architecture through traceability and using it to guide effective change through the traceability across the the perspectives and the artifacts, etc.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
There's another hand if you want to go ahead. Is this being controlled through the office?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Are you hearing me?
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the well explained thought process of showing the difference between the Zachman and the TOGAF. But I wanted to ask, in terms of the documents or the artifacts that you need to then complete your architectural process. So in terms of Zachman, I noticed that it helps us to gather all the documents and all the artifacts that we may need to then complete our architecture. But in terms of TOGAF, we just maybe focus on most importantly on the ADM, which then helps us to then come to the end. So I wanted to ask, in terms of the guidance on how to then combine the two to then come up with a proper and a robust maybe approach to any architecture, to any organization setup, in terms of maybe, I'll just give an example, maybe want to do the process re-engineering at large. So want to just know the architecture of the institution and how we then can we apply these approaches. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there are a number of things there to unbox. So first of all, when it comes to applying the TOGAF standard and the ADM, the architecture development method, that method is going to be used iteratively. And you're not going to be necessarily following exactly the same pattern of the ADM through each iteration. Each iteration will be tailored for what it is you're trying to do. And depending upon the breadth, in other words, the scope of the area and the depth, the level of detail you need to go to, that will depend upon that will determine the types and the maturity of the artifacts that you need to produce. So your first progress through the ADM will involve tailoring it to suit the environment. That means taking account of any external frameworks, any external dependencies, regulations that are required, the different deliverables and artifacts that you need to produce, the deliverables being those things that have to be signed off by the stakeholders, and the artifacts being some of those individual diagrams and contents and things which may go into those deliverables. Once you've gone through an iteration of the ADM, then some or all of those things may be produced to a level of maturity and completeness. But as you iterate through the ADM over and over again, you will build out more and more content to the point where you've got enough. And the important thing is to go to the point of having enough, but not too much, not to waste your time going to too much detail. If you go to too much detail, you're over investing time, energy, and resources into something which probably won't deliver value at the end of the day, and may well result in you having a shortfall of time, energy, and resources elsewhere. So trying to keep the different architecture domains at the same, relatively the same level. So your business architecture, your application architecture, your information and your technology architectures, keeping them in step so that you're building them out to the right level of detail is one of the key things about getting a successful set of iterations through, so that you've got to the right level. And what is the right level is very much a question for what's the project, what is it you're actually doing, and with any industry, with any organization, that will be a different question for every single circumstance. So you have to understand what it is you're trying to do. You have to understand where it is you want to get to, and your target architecture will tell you what that target state is. And that will be a longer term view. If you're not getting to that target state in one step, there will be a number of steps to get there, and each of those individual steps on that journey will be a transition. The architectures of those transitions will be well known and understood, because they will be a near deliverable, if you like, whereas the target architecture will be a longer game vision, a longer activity, and that will need to be periodically refreshed. So lots of things to consider. Doing enough, not too much, cycling around in a way which suits, and the TOGAF ADM suits agile approaches as well as waterfall approaches. You can do either, and whatever the relevant program management and project management method that's in use. Hopefully that's answered some or all of your question.
I think it really builds on the idea of running your enterprise architecture like a business. You know, that you have a very clear understanding that intellectual capital is your stock in trade, and how you structure it so that you can do the absolute minimum and maximize the value that you can do with the least amount of effort. And every time you iterate around the ADM, what you're doing is you're raising that stock, that level of intellectual capital, given the fact that you are not you're just not piling it up. And that's where the whole discipline around looking after the content within your enterprise architecture repository, and you're managing that intellectual capital as an asset. So it's not cluttered, and it's well structured, and it's accessible, and it's it's really manufacturing concepts like mass customization and just in time, and so on and so forth. So it's just as a general point, I really would like to encourage people to get actively involved, because of the fact that we really have an Africa focus. So it's really taking enterprise architecture as a discipline into Africa, across countries, etc. And so I think this is a hugely valuable forum, and Andrew, your contribution and the way you're kind of guiding this is really appreciated. As the difference that it can make going into Africa, because I firmly believe that the timing is right, where enterprise architecture can make a really significant difference into how Africa progresses. Thank you.
We have another hand.
Has your question been answered?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It has been answered.
Yeah. Are there any others?
There is another
There's a
hand up.
question from Aubrey.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope it's afternoon everywhere else. Yeah, a very nice, a very nice, I would say conceptual contrast that you mentioned earlier on. 1 minute we understand it, 1 minute it disappears. Architecture and design. Yeah, I'm sure it's something that we can talk about some other time because we've run out of time. But yeah, I think these are two concepts. We sometimes use them across without actually.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pete. And it is one of those things which is part of the culture of any organization that you work for, and that where they draw the line between what is architecture and where that architecture finishes and where design starts is a very broad space. So it won't be the same in every organization. Some places will be very, very rigid in the way that they define architecture as being very high level. In other organizations where there's perhaps a more dynamic way of working, that architecture line may go much deeper, so that your architects are much closer to the delivery part of the organization. But it does vary, and it's impossible to say in any given organization, for all organizations, it's impossible to say what the right place is, because the right place is probably where it is, because that's where it's ended up. It's difficult to try and pin it down and say, well, no, you've got the wrong balance here. Organizations will usually work it out for themselves if that's the case.
There is certainly a discussion that we could almost have a presentation, a session around that specifically. Currently, you're bringing in standards like ISO 15288 and preliminary design versus detailed design. It's a very interesting topic. That
indeed, there are some questions in the chat as well. I'm both just having a quick look at those. Will the artificial intelligence working group be working on all industries from onset, or look at a specific industry? So the focus of the artificial intelligence work group is on AI in general, not at an industry specific level. So some of the other forums that are out there, like OSDU, like OPAF, may well take the output from the Architecture Forum's AI working group and apply that in their specific areas. But the AI working group itself will be looking across all industries, and the fundamental principles, if you like, upon which domain-specific or industry-specific implementations will be created. And is there, or how soon can there be, a reference architecture for education? Well, we don't have a working group for education as such. There is a separate forum called Initiate, which is based over in India, and that is an educational focus. But if you wanted one for architecture within the Architecture Forum, and reference model for education, then that's where starting up a new work group or new working group would be the answer to that, because we don't have anything going at the moment. So we would need members, at least 2 member organizations who had a desire to work on that, to push it forwards. And if that were the case, then Dan and myself can facilitate the stand-up of a new organization within the Architecture Forum, so a new working group, a new project, to start working and focusing on that. And an example of that happening is that we're in the middle of discussions as to whether or not the the existing commercial aviation reference architecture can be taken up a level and applied more broadly to transportation in general. The result of that might well be a separate transportation working group that's spinning up. So what we have is what's currently active. If we have people that want to start something new, absolutely come to us and talk to us about what ideas you've got.
The September presentation is from a person from the University of Stellenbosch, looking specifically at EA in education. So it's going to be a very interesting session, and I invite you all to attend. It is going to be a face-to-face meeting in Johannesburg. We really need to make a plan to get back to Cape Town and Durban, and we will be streaming it live as well, or after the event. And certainly we'd like to invite you to attend. Good. Are there any further questions? Or are we pretty much done with the list?
There's one more in the chat, which is about why value stream responsibilities are allocated to application architecture and not business architecture. That's a great question. That's one I'd have to get Dan to answer, but unfortunately Dan is sunning himself on holiday, so I can't get an answer from him yet.
Actually you can hear I'm in a meeting.
Oh dear.
So so there is an overlap between many of the working groups and some of the work that they do. So business architecture is also looking at information mapping, for example, as a generic technique. There is a separate information architecture working group. So sometimes there is collaboration and cross-pollination between working groups. So it means that boundaries are sometimes blurred. Any more for any more?
Someone comes through in the chat if you want to squiz down, Andrew.
And we've got a couple more have come in since. People wanting to join, that's great. Yeah, go to the Plato site, which is, there's a link to it in the slide deck that you'll have access to. And you can follow the instructions on that slide about self-registration. It's in the deck. And okay, so yeah, there's that. The one about IT for IT and digital transformation has been answered.
Yeah, Judith, good to see you there. We'll be talking on Thursday.
Yes, hi Stuart. Yes, looking forward.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew, just you're wrapping up. Thanks so much for your time, and it's really been great. And I look forward to welcoming you to South Africa at some point in time. It's
yeah,
so good to see you.
Really good.
See you now. And thank you all so much for attending. And the presentation will be posted on the opengroup.coza, and Andrew's details, etc., are there. And look forward to engaging. And let's take enterprise architecture into Africa. This is quite an exciting challenge. And thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.